Season 4, Episode 11, called Cabin Fever. Very cool episode, as always. Well, you know, near the end of the season, they always get like this. They start getting crazy, man, let me tell you. So, I guess the best place to start would be with all Locke's flashbacks. Locke's flashback starts in a most unusual way, kind of similar to the way Season 3 started, with Juliet playing the song and then kind of like dancing, crying to it. But this girl wasn't exactly crying. She was kind of happy. And, because she was about to go out with some guy, I guess, I don't know. And her mother was like, no, you're not going out with him, he's twice as old as you are. And my first thought was, wait a minute, is this like Helen, maybe? Or, I don't know why I thought that, because it doesn't seem like he didn't meet Helen until later in his life. But anyway, well, come to find out, it's Locke's mother. She goes outside and she's running off, and her mother's chasing her out the door saying, you can't go with him. And she's saying, I'm going to do what I want, don't tell me what I can't do, and blah, blah. Well, that's what she should have said. So then she's running out into the street, she gets hit by a car. And I'm like, oh my god, man. It's weird how many characters get hit by cars on this show. We saw Michael get hit by a car after he talked to Walt. We saw Locke get hit by a car himself in the parking lot while he was at work. And we saw Michael try to kill himself by ramming a car into a dumpster. Somebody else got hit by a car. I can't remember who it is right off the top of my head. Well, Claire was in a car accident. Jack almost committed suicide, and the car accident saved his life. Probably, if you look around, there's like every single character has had something to do with a car accident. You know, Kate and her boyfriend Tom, you know, she accidentally killed Tom by getting into a car accident. And, well, who else is there? There's Hurley, beginning of Season 4, he's in a car accident. Is there anybody on this show who hasn't been in a car accident? Are they all just drunk or something? What about Jen and Son? I don't think they have. Anyway, that's beside the point. But, you know, I was listening to Anakin talk about it, and something occurred to me. It almost makes me wonder if, you know, with all this talk about people going back in time and stuff, it makes me wonder if somebody wasn't going back and trying to kill John Locke. So she gets hit by the car. She ends up having the baby anyway. At 6 months pregnant, she has the baby anyway. And, of course, the baby, John Locke, fights off all his infections. Ain't that just like him? I kind of thought to myself, you know, obviously he was special, and I think they wanted us to know that by saying, you know, first of all, by having him born 3 months early and survive, and then to get infected and be able to survive that, too. Oh, and the other thing is that when he's a baby, Richard Alpert is there visiting him in the hospital, and they ask his grandmother, you know, and just another thing, his grandmother goes and pulls out a cigarette, and she's like, you can't smoke in here. Well, you'd think she would know better than that, but it almost makes me wonder if she wasn't trying to kill John Locke, because, too, you know, the same way that the person in the car was, it's like maybe they were trying to kill him, and and the island kept protecting him. Maybe the island doesn't want him to die, so that's what protected him from all this unimaginable stuff. Ooh, I just got dizzy all of a sudden there. Ugh, don't say that. I just see my... Anyway, well... So then when he's about 4 or 5, Richard Alpert comes back again, shows up again in his life. And he lays out these objects. One of them is like a little vial of sand. There's a comic book, a knife, and some other stuff, compass. And he asks John Locke, which of these belongs to you? So John picks up the compass, and he picks up the sand, which is basically the island, I guess. It's kind of interesting that the subtext there is that John is taking the island, the sand, because the island belongs to him. So it's kind of, I think that's the subtext of what they're saying in that scene. But anyway, and then John picks up a knife, and that's when Richard Alpert kind of does that thing where he looks off to the side, like, you know, and then he just picks up and leaves and says, okay, well, he's not who we thought he was, you know. Of course, Ben does just the opposite. He gives Locke a knife and tells him to kill his dad, and when he can't do that, he says he's not who we thought he was. The knife is not who he is. So that's why Richard didn't want him to pick it up. But I mean, I don't know what he expected to change, because, you know, I could have been 5 years old, and I mean, when I was 5 years old, I played with He-Man action figures, but I never grew up to become a big He-Man fan or anything. So I don't know why it would really matter that much so much. And whether or not he picked up the knife, the end result was going to be the same, according to course correction and all that stuff. You know, you can't go back and change the past. You can't change who somebody is. And so I don't really know why he's trying to do that. And later, Locke is a teenager, somebody comes up to him and says, "We want you to be a scientist," but Locke says, "That's not who I am. Don't tell me what I can't do," and that's basically that scene in a nutshell. Not a whole lot to it, really, but... And then later we flash back to much later in his life, and Terry O'Quinn is playing, and so obviously he's old enough now that this is pretty recent, and it seems to be like right after he fell out of the building. Next thing you know, Mr. Abaddon shows up, and I can't even remember what he said to him. I think I need to watch the episode again, because maybe I'm not really remembering this too well. But just the fact that Abaddon even bothered to visit him, it's like, what was he trying to do? It's like Locke has been visited by all these different people who we think are maybe time-traveling because they're all the same age no matter when they show up. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if Abaddon would have showed up to Locke as a kid, and been the same age as we've been seeing him. What are they trying to get him to do? I don't know. It seems like they might be training him for something, but I can't imagine what that would be. Damn it, that is the 4th time they have called today. I got home from work this morning at 8:30, and it's now 2:30. They've called 4 times at Wells Fargo. Never co-sign on a loan, I'm telling you. It's funny how I keep pointing out these similarities to Percy in the Green Mile, and then the guy who actually plays Percy shows up in this latest episode. It's like, what the heck? Well, the guy who plays Percy plays Horace. He showed up to Locke right at the beginning of the episode, and he was cutting down a tree. Seemingly, maybe he was building the cabin himself or something, I don't know. He said he just needed a getaway for him and his wife or something. The stuff that he was doing, he kept repeating. He would say hi to Locke, he'd cut down the tree, they'd have a little conversation, then it would cut back, and Locke would be looking at him like, what the heck? And then the tree would fall down again a second time, and he'd be like, hey, what's up? And like, hey, I never met you. Now, I don't know how many people know this, but a similar thing happened the very first time that Locke went to Jacob's cabin. If you go back and watch that first time that Locke and Ben went to Jacob's cabin, when Jacob said, "Help me," well, if you watch really close in that scene, either Locke or Ben has a lantern, and he's holding it, and when everything starts going crazy, the lantern falls down, and this fire explodes and starts up. And if you watch really close, the camera's pointing at Locke's face, and you can see the fire between the camera and Locke's face, and then it cuts to another shot of Locke. It's really awkward, because it's like 2 shots in a row of Locke. Is because you can tell his face suddenly moves across the screen. And after that cut, the fire isn't there anymore. So it's like, it's almost like these time shifts are happening right here in front of us, and we have no idea what it means. It's like, how could there be a map that tells where the cabin is if it was moving? Unless it only moves because of Hurley or something, I don't know.